As part of my work into the idea of the environomicon, that being the concept that certain locations are beyond just having a spiritual, supernatural or magical feeling, and in fact these locations are actually more along the line of active, supernatural regions, where human consciousness is not only affected by the ambiance or the ethereal, mystical nature of the location, but is actively involved in communicating and being altered with it and engaging with it on a conscious shifting level. We all know of places where things feel different. We all know of locations where there's something strange about this place, and it's often not necessarily a bad thing. Often it's a nice feeling, but somehow it affects us in a way that this place is different. Somehow reality feels somewhat different here. Now, one of these locations is the city of Liverpool in the north of England, famous for its pop music and its football, but also there's something else going on in that city. It seems to have a higher level of ghost stories and hauntings and supernatural events than just about anywhere else. And one of the most common supernatural events reported in that city are shifts in reality, time slips and interdimensional shifts. One area in the city centre around Bowl Street has a long history of people suddenly finding themselves in a different time. There are numerous stories of someone walking into a pub in the 1980s and 90s and finding everyone inside dressed in 1940s clothing. They'd walk outside and see barrage balloons floating over the city as they were in 1940s during World War II. People walking into shops and suddenly being surrounded by 1950s teddy boys. Incredible stories of young boys walking down alleyways and suddenly finding themselves back in the 1800s, looking into windows where people are working by candlelight or oil lamps. And then suddenly, as it happened, returning back to this reality. But there are other phenomena which happen in the city of Liverpool, well documented in Tom Sleeman's excellent series of books on haunted Liverpool. And one of these is the idea of dimensional shifts, the idea that reality changes at certain locations. On another one of my videos, I've mentioned that where John Lennon grew up was a fairy ring, and people were known to enter one side of the fairy ring and come out in a completely different place than where they had entered, not far from the mythical Strawberry Fields of that song. In one of Sleeman's books, there's a remarkable story of a young Asian student who suffers a chronic and severe nosebleed. After the bleeding stops, he suddenly finds himself in a city he doesn't recognise, in that it's the same city, the same streets. The people he knows don't know who he is. Where he believed he lived, or where he lived in a certain reality, was not where he lived in this reality. His friends didn't recognise him. More importantly, and very interestingly, the wider cultural significance of this time shift became apparent when he looked down at a newspaper stand and noticed a headline story that the singer of Oasis, Liam Gallagher, had been murdered in a fight. Being an Oasis fan himself, he was very upset by this. Also, during his experience in the time slip, he managed to meet some people and became very fondly attached to them. Then, after a while, he found himself back in the reality which he was in before he had the nosebleed. And interestingly again, found himself longing for the people that were in the other reality. Now, this brings up all kinds of issues regarding the multiverse, but also how we experience dreams and what dreams actually are. I believe that the chronic nosebleed was significant in that it affected his neurology to the point where his brain and nervous system was literally tuning in a different reality. But the question is, why does this happen in Liverpool? Is there something in the geology? Is there something in the river itself, the Mersey, the way it enters the sea there? Is there something in the landscape? Are there ley lines perhaps impacting upon this? Are there other geomagnetic or geoelectrical or diamagnetic phenomena that is causing this? What about the people themselves? And this is another thing we often overlook, is the idea that when you have a community that witnesses a paranormal or a 14 event, outsiders don't experience it and mock it. But is it the people in that area that have the ability alone to experience these phenomena and these events? You think of something like the Mothman experience in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, USA. A unique phenomena, a 14 experience that only people in that community experienced. Likewise, is Liverpool the same? Is there something about the people of Liverpool that they are more inclined to have these time slips and dimensional shifts? And also, Liverpool itself probably has more ghost stories and hauntings than just about anywhere else in England. And that's also interesting because it ties in with the same idea. Where does reality begin and end? And is somewhere like Liverpool a threshold or demarcation point where the fixity of reality, whereby our nervous system and minds engage the five senses around us, has an element of fluctuation or a thin veneer that can be breached if you live in that area? I know many people in Liverpool that all seem to have remarkable paranormal and 14 experiences and stories. There's something about that city where the veil between realities is thinner.